Somewhere in your home, there's a thing you made. A shelf, a meal, a spreadsheet you're quietly proud of, a flat-pack cabinet you swore at for an hour, and you think it's good, maybe better than it actually is. Here's the strange part. If someone else had made that exact same thing and offered to sell it to you, you'd pay less for it. Same object. The only difference is whose hands built it. Yours. Psychologists have a name for this, and they measured it carefully. But that's only half of what I want to do today. I want to show you why your own labor quietly inflates the worth of what you touch. And then I want to do the harder thing this channel exists for. I want to ask how sure we should even be that the effect is as big as the science says, because the answer turns out to be a lesson in itself. Start with something obvious. We rarely stay there. In 2012, 3 researchers ran a set of experiments with the most mundane materials imaginable. Plain storage boxes, origami, Lego. They had people build a plain storage box themselves. Then they asked what it was worth to them. In a setup where naming a real price actually mattered, and the builders wanted more for their own box, then a second group would pay for the identical one, offered to them already assembled. 78 cents versus 48, a 63% premium for the same box because your hands touched it. They called it the IKEA effect. Labor leads to love. Now here is the detail I love because it's where the feeling turns into something you can measure. They had people fold their own origami, then bid on it. People would pay nearly 5 times more for their own lopsided paper frog than an outsider would. 23 cents for the thing they made. A stranger looking at that same frog would pay 5. And this is the part that should stop you. A different group of outsiders was shown origami folded by actual experts and asked what they would pay. They landed at 27 cents, which means the builders valued their own amateur folding 23 cents, just about as highly as strangers valued a professional's work. So what is actually happening? The researchers did something very clever to find out. They found a boundary. The extra value only appears when you finish. In one version, people built their Lego and then took it apart again. In another, they were stopped before they could complete it. And in both, the bonus vanished. No completion, no love. That is a real clue about the mechanism and not just a fun fact. It tells you the effect is not about effort alone. Sweating over something you never finish does not do it. It's effort that ends in a thing that stands. So why would completing a build make you value it more? The honest answer is that there are a few forces tangled together, and the science hasn't clearly separated them. 1, effort justification. You put work in and your mind reads the work back as evidence the thing is worth it. Otherwise, why did you bother? 2, competence. Finishing something is a small proof to yourself that you're capable. A completed build makes you feel able, and that good feeling attaches to the object. 3, ownership. The simple fact that you made it makes it feel like yours, and we value what is ours. Notice what all 3 have in common. Every one of them is about you, your effort, your competence, your sense of ownership. None of them is a fact about the box. And that is the first thing I want you to walk out with. The warm certainty you feel about something you built is real, but it's a report about your own investment, not a measurement of the thing, which is exactly why you cannot fully trust it. Now, to the question this channel actually cares about. It feels true, but things that feel true are the ones we're supposed to be most careful with. So how well does the IKEA effect actually hold up? And at first, the answer is pretty well. This is not one lonely study. Recently, researchers pooled the whole literature together, 55 studies, more than 5,000 people. And when you combine them, the effect is clearly there, a solid, moderate-sized effect. If I stopped right there, you would close this video believing the IKEA effect is rock solid. Most videos would stop right there, but there's a second number in that same analysis, and it's the reason I made this one. The same researchers checked for something called publication bias. Here's the idea in plain terms. Studies that find an exciting result get published. Studies that find nothing often end up in a drawer, unpublished, invisible. So when you gather up only the published studies, you're reading a room that's been quietly stacked. The failures were never invited. There's a way to see the fingerprints of this. It's called a funnel plot. If everything got published, the studies should scatter evenly. If one side is missing, the picture comes out lopsided. And you can put a number on that lopsidedness. They ran 2 of those tests. Both came back positive for bias. Both said, in effect, the published record for the IKEA effect is asymmetric in exactly the way you would see if the disappointing studies had gone missing. And here's the thing you should know before you trust any effect like this. What just happened to the IKEA effect is not some quirk of one topic. It's the normal condition of the field. Across all of science, psychology has the highest rate of positive published results of any field. More than 9 in 10 published psychology papers report their hypotheses worked. Nature does not hand out wins 9 times out of 10. Journals do. And there's a difference between studies never getting published and published studies not holding up, but they push the same direction. In 2015, a huge team reran 100 well-known psychology studies. 97 of the originals had reported a clear positive result. When they were rerun, only about a third came out significant again, and the effects that did survive were on average half the size. So a published pile that is missing its failures and headline effects that shrink when you look again is the normal weather in this field, not a scandal, which is exactly why that funnel test on the IKEA effect matters. The true IKEA effect is real, but it's almost certainly smaller than the headline number because the headline was computed from a pile that's missing its failures. And I want you to feel the joke inside this because it's a good one about how we overvalue the things we produce. And the research itself, as a body, appears to have overvalued its own product. The bias has the bias. That's not me dunking on them. That's the system working. It was researchers in the same field who ran the test that caught it. That's what honest science looks like. It audits its own shelf. And here's the tool I actually want to hand you. The thing you can carry out of here and use for the rest of your life. The next time you hear studies show some big clean effect, you now know the exact question that separates a sturdy claim from an inflated one. Did they check for publication bias? Did they look at the funnel? Because a real effect and a real effect that's been quietly inflated by a drawer full of missing failures looks identical until someone checks. So there are 2 things to take home, and they rhyme. Small one, that thing you made and love a little too much. Go ahead and love it. Just know the feeling's mostly about you, your effort, your hands, your finish. That's not a con. It's one of the quiet ways work becomes meaning. Only remember what it is when you go to sell it or defend it or decide it's better than it is. The big one, even a real replicated 5,000 person effect can be inflated by the studies you never got to see. So ask, whether it's a shelf or a science, the confident number is not the end of the question. The honest question is always, how would we know if this is smaller than it looks? I'm Jeff. This is where we figure out why you believe things and how we'd even know if they're true.